The stars had always been a source of wonder for him, but now they felt like silent witnesses to his unraveling. He stood on the edge of an observation deck aboard the orbital station, gazing out at the endless expanse of space that stretched beyond the reinforced glass. The void was vast and indifferent, much like her absence had become in these past weeks. She had simply vanished without explanation, leaving behind only echoes of her presence. A faint scent still lingering in their shared quarters, stray strands of hair caught in the crevices of furniture, and memories too vivid to fade. Their union had once seemed impossible, a tale spun from the stuff of legends rather than reality. A human soldier stationed far from Earth's embrace, he had never imagined his life would intersect with hers, an alien princess whose beauty transcended species, whose wisdom defied age, and whose grace made even the most hardened veterans pause in awe. Their bond had defied convention, ignored borders both cultural and cosmic, and ignited something within them neither could have anticipated. Love, raw and unyielding, had taken root between two beings who should never have crossed paths. Yet here they were, or rather, here he was, alone amidst the wreckage of what they'd built together. He remembered the first time he saw her, bathed in the soft glow of a foreign sun as she stepped onto the battlefield not as an adversary, but as a mediator. Her voice carried authority yet softened by compassion, commanding attention without demanding submission. At first glance, she appeared otherworldly, her skin shimmering faintly under artificial light, eyes reflecting galaxies unknown, and yet there was humanity in her gaze, a spark of recognition that bridged the chasm between their worlds. It wasn't love at first sight, it was curiosity, intrigue, a pull neither logic nor duty could explain. Over time, their interactions shifted from formal exchanges to stolen moments beneath alien skies, where words became unnecessary and touch spoke volumes. But now, staring into the abyss outside, all those moments felt distant, almost unreal. How could someone so integral to his existence disappear so completely? There were no messages, no signs of struggle, no trace of where she might have gone or why. Only silence greeted him when he called out to her in dreams, only emptiness filled the spaces she used to occupy. And though he tried to rationalize her departure, perhaps political pressures forced her hand, perhaps familial obligations pulled her away, the truth remained elusive, slipping through his fingers like sand. It gnawed at him, this uncertainty. Was it something he said? Something he failed to do? Or was it merely fate playing its cruel games, weaving destinies together only to tear them apart again? Each question led to more questions. Each answer evaded left him adrift in a sea of doubt. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the lack of closure, the haunting possibility that maybe, just maybe, she didn't care enough to say goodbye. Yet despite the ache in his chest, he couldn't bring himself to let go. Not entirely. She had left pieces of herself scattered throughout his life, fragments embedded too deeply to extract. Every corner of their home held reminders. The intricate carvings on the wall she'd insisted were symbols of protection, the melody of her laughter echoing faintly whenever he passed through certain rooms, the way sunlight filtered through crystalline windows exactly as she loved it. These remnants kept her alive in his mind, refusing to allow him the mercy of forgetting. And so, he clung to hope, however fragile it might be. Maybe one day she would return, offering explanations wrapped in apologies. Or maybe she wouldn't, and he'd spend the rest of his days chasing shadows of what could have been. Either way, he knew one thing for certain. Forgetting her wasn't an option. Even if she wanted him to, even if the universe conspired against them, he couldn't erase the impact she'd made on his soul. Forgetting wasn't freedom, it was surrender. And he wasn't ready to give up just yet. In the days following her disappearance, he immersed himself in routine, clinging to the familiar rhythms of duty as if they could anchor him against the storm raging inside. The corridors of the orbital station buzzed with activity, soldiers moving briskly between assignments, their boots clicking against metal floors. He joined them, donning his uniform with mechanical precision, each button fastened, each strap adjusted as though adherence to protocol might dull the ache in his chest. But no matter how tightly he laced his boots or how crisply he tucked his shirt, the emptiness lingered, a phantom limb that refused to heal. His comrades noticed, of course. Soldiers weren't trained to ignore cracks in the armor of those around them, not when survival depended on cohesion. They approached him cautiously at first, offering platitudes and half-hearted attempts at camaraderie. "She'll come back," one said, patting his shoulder awkwardly before retreating. Another muttered something about how royals always had their reasons, their duties bound by chains invisible to outsiders. He nodded along, forcing smiles that never reached his eyes, grateful for their concern but unable to bridge the chasm between his pain and their understanding. Eventually, the whispers began. Conversations hushed when he entered a room, glances exchanged over datapads and holographic displays. Some speculated she had grown tired of him, others whispered of betrayal or espionage. Theories swirled like debris caught in a planetary storm, none grounded in fact but all feeding into the chaos consuming his thoughts. He tried to shut them out, focusing instead on training exercises and tactical briefings, but the voices seeped through regardless. Each word felt like another layer of weight pressing down on him, making it harder to breathe. Then came the nights, when the station's artificial lights dimmed and the hum of machinery softened into a low murmur. Sleep eluded him, replaced by restless pacing and futile attempts to piece together the puzzle of her absence. His mind replayed their final moments together, searching for clues he might have missed. Had her smile faltered when she looked at him? Was there hesitation in her touch, a flicker of unease beneath her calm exterior? Or had everything been as it always was, until suddenly it wasn't? One evening, unable to bear the confines of his quarters any longer, he wandered into the mess hall. The space was nearly deserted, save for a few stragglers nursing cups of synthetic coffee or picking at lukewarm meals. In the corner sat Captain Rail, a seasoned officer known for his pragmatism and sharp wit. Their relationship had always been professional, marked by mutual respect but little personal connection. Still, desperation drove him forward, and he found himself sliding into the seat across from her. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, raising an eyebrow as she sipped her drink. Her tone wasn't unkind, merely direct, a hallmark of her leadership style. He chuckled dryly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Feel like it too." Rail studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, surprising him, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. "You're not the first person to lose someone unexpectedly, you know. Hell, I've seen plenty of good soldiers crumble under less." Her voice softened slightly, though her gaze remained steady. "But you've got two choices here, let it break you, or use it to make yourself stronger." Her words struck a chord, resonating deep within him even as they stung. Strength, that was what he'd always prided himself on, what had carried him through countless battles and hardships. Yet now, faced with loss so profound it defied comprehension, strength felt like a distant memory, something he'd misplaced along with her. "I don't know if I can," he admitted quietly, the admission tasting bitter on his tongue. Vulnerability wasn't something he wore easily, especially not in front of others. To his surprise, Rail didn't mock him or dismiss his vulnerability. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully. "None of us do, not really. But sometimes, we don't get a choice. Life keeps moving, whether we're ready or not. All we can do is decide how we move with it." Her advice lingered long after their conversation ended, echoing in his mind as he returned to his quarters. It wasn't comfort she offered, nor absolution, he didn't expect either, but a challenge disguised as counsel. Could he rise above this? Could he transform his grief into resolve, channeling it into something greater than despair? The answers remained unclear, shrouded in the same uncertainty that clouded every aspect of his life since her departure. But for the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of determination stir within him, faint but persistent. Determined to uncover some semblance of clarity, he delved into the station's archives, poring over records and logs with a fervor that bordered on obsession. The data streams flickered across holoscreens, casting eerie shadows on the walls of his dimly lit quarters. His fingers danced over control panels, pulling up communication logs, security footage, and diplomatic correspondences. Each fragment of information was scrutinized, analyzed for patterns or anomalies that might hint at her sudden departure. Yet, despite his relentless efforts, the digital trails yielded nothing substantial. No encrypted messages, no clandestine meetings, no traces of external pressure forcing her hand. Frustration mounted as days turned into weeks, each dead end amplifying his sense of helplessness. He began questioning everyone who had interacted with her during her stay, from maintenance crews to high-ranking officials. Most interviews were fruitless, filled with vague recollections and polite evasions. However, snippets of conversation occasionally surfaced, whispers of late-night discussions she'd had with envoys from distant systems, mentions of strained communications with her homeworld. These tidbits fueled his suspicion that political machinations played a role in her vanishing act, though concrete evidence remained tantalizingly out of reach. As his investigation deepened, he uncovered layers of interstellar politics more complex than he had ever imagined. Treaties teetered on the brink of collapse, alliances fractured under the weight of conflicting interests, and power struggles simmered beneath diplomatic facades. Her position as a princess placed her at the epicenter of these turbulent dynamics, a pawn in games far larger than their personal lives. The realization hit him hard. Perhaps her disappearance wasn't solely about him. Perhaps it was about survival, strategy, and sacrifices demanded by realms beyond his comprehension. Amidst this labyrinth of intrigue, a startling revelation emerged. Hidden within classified files, accessible only through backdoor channels and risky breaches of protocol, lay documents suggesting covert operations involving her family. References to secret negotiations, coded language hinting at imminent shifts in galactic power structures, all pointed towards a scenario where her abrupt exit might have been orchestrated for reasons obscured by layers of secrecy. This discovery sent shockwaves through him, complicating his emotions further. Betrayal mingled with empathy, anger intertwined with sorrow. He realized then that pursuing answers wouldn't necessarily lead to peace. Knowledge often brought its own burdens, unraveling truths too heavy to bear. Yet, driven by a mix of desperation and defiance, he pressed on, determined to peel back every layer until he reached the core of her vanishing. Each new piece of information painted a picture increasingly stark and unforgiving, a portrait of a woman caught between love and lineage, torn between heart and heritage. As he absorbed these revelations, he couldn't shake the feeling that understanding her choices would demand confronting uncomfortable realities about himself, his world, and the very nature of sacrifice. With each passing day, the weight of his quest grew heavier, dragging him deeper into a vortex of emotional turmoil. The lines between obsession and necessity blurred, leaving him unsure whether he sought answers for closure or merely to validate the depth of his despair. Exhaustion became his constant companion, etched into the dark circles under his eyes and the tremor in his hands as he scrolled through endless streams of data. Sleep evaded him, replaced by restless nights spent piecing together fragments of conversations and dissecting cryptic documents. His body ached from hours hunched over terminals, yet physical discomfort paled in comparison to the gnawing emptiness inside. Isolation crept in like a shadow, wrapping itself around him even amidst the bustling corridors of the station. Colleagues who once offered tentative support now regarded him with wary sidelong glances, their initial sympathy giving way to unease. Whispers followed him wherever he went, speculations morphing into rumors that painted him as unstable, consumed by grief to the point of irrationality. He heard them sometimes, snippets of hushed conversations drifting through open doors or catching his name in passing remarks. "He's losing it," someone murmured outside the mess hall. "Obsessed," another replied knowingly. These words stung, not because they were untrue but because they underscored the growing distance between him and everyone else. Yet, paradoxically, this isolation sharpened his focus. Freed from the distractions of social niceties and superficial interactions, he dove headfirst into his investigation, driven by a singular purpose. Every setback fueled his determination, every unanswered question reigniting the fire within him. The pain of her absence transformed into fuel, propelling him forward even as it threatened to consume him whole. He oscillated between moments of clarity, where connections clicked into place like puzzle pieces falling into alignment, and stretches of overwhelming despair, where the enormity of his task seemed insurmountable. His emotions churned like a tempestuous sea, waves crashing against the fragile vessel of his sanity. Anger surged unpredictably, directed at himself for failing to see warning signs, at her for leaving without explanation, at the universe for conspiring to keep them apart. Guilt followed close behind, whispering cruel reminders of inadequacy, that perhaps he hadn't been enough, hadn't understood her fully, hadn't fought hard enough to hold on to her. Beneath it all lay a foundation of grief, raw and unrelenting, anchoring him to a reality he desperately wished to escape. And yet, amidst this maelstrom, a strange sense of purpose emerged. For all the agony and exhaustion, there was also a perverse kind of liberation in surrendering to the chaos. No longer did he cling to the illusion of control. Instead, he embraced the storm, letting it carry him wherever it willed. In doing so, he discovered a resilience he hadn't known existed, a strength born not from victory but from enduring defeat after defeat without yielding. It wasn't triumph he sought anymore, it was understanding. Understanding of her choices, of their shared past, of the forces that had torn them apart. And perhaps, buried somewhere beneath layers of complexity, understanding of himself. Despite the mounting challenges and the isolating whispers of his peers, he found solace in unexpected places, fragments of her essence woven into the fabric of his daily existence. The small rituals she had introduced into their lives became anchors, grounding him amidst the turbulence. Each morning, he brewed tea using leaves from her homeworld, their earthy aroma filling the air and momentarily transporting him to serene mornings spent discussing trivialities and profound philosophies alike. The taste was bittersweet, a reminder of her presence yet tinged with the sorrow of her absence. Still, these quiet moments provided a semblance of normalcy, a bridge to happier times that fortified his spirit against the encroaching despair. Equally sustaining were the stories she had shared, legends of her people, tales of courage and sacrifice that resonated deeply within him. He revisited these narratives, finding strength in their themes of resilience and perseverance. One story in particular stood out: the myth of the Star Weaver, a celestial artisan who crafted constellations from threads of light. According to legend, the Star Weaver faced countless trials, each failure threatening to unravel her creations. Yet, she persisted, learning from every setback, until her tapestry spanned the heavens, a testament to enduring hope and creativity. This allegory mirrored his journey, inspiring him to view each obstacle not as a defeat but as a thread in the larger pattern of his quest. These reflections bolstered his resolve, transforming his pursuit from a desperate scramble for answers into a deliberate exploration of meaning. He began documenting his findings meticulously, crafting a narrative that intertwined factual discoveries with personal insights. This process allowed him to step back from the immediacy of his pain, viewing it through a lens of detachment that revealed hidden nuances. Patterns emerged from the chaos, connections between political maneuvers and cultural traditions, echoes of ancient conflicts reverberating through modern decisions. By contextualizing her disappearance within this broader framework, he gained perspective, recognizing the intricate dance of fate and free will that shaped their lives. Moreover, this analytical approach fostered a renewed appreciation for her complexity. She was not merely a victim of circumstance or a pawn in political games. She was a multifaceted individual navigating treacherous waters with grace and intelligence. This realization deepened his admiration, shifting his focus from lamenting her loss to celebrating her legacy. He envisioned future actions guided by the principles she embodied, compassion tempered by pragmatism, strength rooted in vulnerability. Such aspirations infused his mission with a sense of purpose beyond mere resolution, elevating it to a tribute worthy of her memory. Thus, even as doubts lingered and uncertainties persisted, he moved forward with a clarity previously elusive. The path ahead remained fraught with challenges, yet each step felt imbued with significance, each effort a testament to the enduring impact of their bond. Through remembrance and reflection, he forged tools of resilience, arming himself for whatever truths awaited discovery. And though the outcome remained veiled in mystery, the journey itself became a testament to the indelible mark she left upon his soul, a beacon guiding him through darkness toward eventual illumination. The station's communication network hummed faintly in the background as he sat hunched over his terminal, scrolling through streams of text that flickered across the screen. It wasn't just official records or classified documents anymore. He had begun combing through social feeds, message boards, and encrypted channels where whispers of unrest often took root. The digital sprawl of interstellar society was vast, chaotic, and brimming with noise, but buried within were fragments of truth waiting to be unearthed. He knew she wouldn't have left without a trace. Even if her actions were deliberate, there would be echoes, an offhand comment here, a coded phrase there, that hinted at her intentions. One thread caught his attention, a series of cryptic exchanges between anonymous users on a shadowy forum known for leaking sensitive information. At first glance, it seemed like harmless speculation about recent diplomatic tensions, but something about the phrasing struck him as familiar. The usernames were randomized strings of characters, yet one post stood out, a single line written in an archaic dialect native to her people. His breath hitched as he translated it mentally. The stars align for those who sacrifice. It could have been coincidence. These forums thrived on mystique, after all, and ancient proverbs were often repurposed for dramatic effect. But the timing of the thread, posted mere days before her disappearance, and its proximity to chatter about her homeworld's political upheaval made his pulse quicken. Someone else noticed this too, judging by the replies. One user responded with what appeared to be gibberish until he cross-referenced it against a cipher used during wartime communications centuries ago. When decoded, the response read, "Her crown weighs heavy." His hands trembled slightly as he copied the data into a secure file. Was this evidence of her involvement, or manipulation? Had she chosen exile under duress, sacrificing personal happiness for the sake of duty? Or worse, had she been coerced into leaving, her autonomy stripped away by forces beyond her control? Each possibility clawed at his mind, reopening wounds he thought had begun to heal. Yet alongside the pain came resolve. If these breadcrumbs led anywhere close to the truth, he owed it to her, and to himself, to follow them. As he delved deeper into the labyrinthine web of messages, another pattern emerged. Several threads referenced rumors of a covert summit involving high-ranking officials from multiple systems, including hers. Details were scarce, obscured by layers of encryption and disinformation, but snippets suggested that the meeting revolved around a controversial proposal, the unification of warring factions under a single banner. Her family's name surfaced repeatedly in connection with this initiative, accompanied by veiled threats and thinly veiled ultimatums. One particularly chilling exchange implied that refusal to comply would result in irreversible consequences. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as the implications sank in. If her departure was tied to the summit, if she had been forced to abandon him to protect her people, then the stakes were far higher than he'd imagined. This wasn't just about their love story fracturing under pressure, it was about power plays spanning galaxies, lives sacrificed on the altar of diplomacy. And somewhere in this tangled mess, she was caught in the crossfire. But then, amidst the cold logic of politics and strategy, a more human element surfaced. A private message embedded within the public discourse, sent directly to an account linked to her household. Unlike the other posts, this one lacked pretense or subterfuge. Written in plain language, it bore none of the usual hallmarks of espionage or propaganda. Instead, it read simply, "You deserve better than this life. Forget me now, while you still can." His vision blurred as he stared at the words, each letter carving itself into his soul. They weren't addressed to him, not explicitly, but how could they not be? Who else would need to forget her? Who else carried the weight of her absence so acutely? Forgetting wasn't freedom, as he'd told himself countless times before. But maybe, just maybe, it was mercy. Mercy for him, mercy for her, mercy for whatever fragile hope remained in a universe bent on tearing them apart. Before he could dwell further on the message, an alert flashed on his screen, a notification from the station's security system. Someone had accessed restricted files related to his investigation. His heart pounded as he traced the breach back to its source, only to find that the intruder had covered their tracks meticulously. All he could determine was that the intrusion originated from an external node outside the station's jurisdiction. Whoever was watching him now knew exactly what he was doing, and didn't want him to continue. A chill ran down his spine as realization dawned. He wasn't alone in this quest. Others were invested in keeping her secrets buried, willing to go to great lengths to ensure silence. The stakes had shifted again, escalating from emotional turmoil to outright danger. Yet instead of fear, he felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about finding answers anymore. It was about defiance. About refusing to let shadows dictate his reality. With renewed determination, he encrypted his findings and prepared to move them to a secure off-site server. If someone wanted to stop him, they'd have to try harder than this. As he worked, his thoughts drifted back to her final words in that private message. Forget her? How could he, when every fiber of his being screamed her name? No, forgetting wasn't an option. Not now. Not ever. The decision came swiftly, almost instinctively. He couldn't stay confined to the orbital station any longer, not when every keystroke felt like it might trigger an unseen trap, not when the walls themselves seemed to close in around him. If answers lay beyond the reach of encrypted files and shadowy forums, then he would go to their source. Her homeworld beckoned, a distant planet shrouded in mystery and tradition, where her family ruled with an iron grip softened only by centuries of ritual and diplomacy. It was dangerous territory, a place where outsiders were met with suspicion and enemies lurked behind every ornate column. But danger had never deterred him before, and it wouldn't now. He packed lightly, taking only what he needed: tools for decryption, a portable holoprojector loaded with his findings, and a small vial containing the remnants of tea leaves she'd once cherished. The latter wasn't practical, but it grounded him, a tangible link to her amidst the uncertainty ahead. As he prepared to leave, Captain Rail intercepted him outside the docking bay. Her expression was unreadable, though her sharp eyes betrayed concern. "You're walking into a war zone," she said bluntly, arms crossed over her chest. "Whatever you think you'll find there, it won't be pretty." "I know," he replied, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "But I don't have a choice." Rail sighed, shaking her head as if resigned to his stubbornness. "Then at least take this." She handed him a compact device no larger than his palm. "It's a cloaking module, experimental tech we've been testing. Won't hold up against direct scans, but it'll buy you time if things get dicey." For a moment, gratitude overwhelmed him. "Thank you," he murmured, tucking the device into his gear. "Don't thank me yet," she shot back, her tone hardening. "Just come back alive. Or at least make sure whatever you're chasing is worth it." Her words lingered as he boarded the shuttle bound for her world. Worth it? He didn't know anymore. All he knew was that staying put meant surrender, and he wasn't ready for that. The journey was long and fraught with tension. Space stretched endlessly around him, vast and indifferent, mirroring the void within. Each jump through hyperspace brought him closer to the heart of the mystery, but also deeper into peril. By the time he arrived, the weight of anticipation pressed heavily on his shoulders. Her planet loomed large in the viewport, its surface painted in hues of gold and emerald, a paradise marred only by the rigid spires of its capital city rising like jagged teeth against the horizon. Landing was uneventful, thanks to forged credentials and the cloaking module Rail had provided. Still, paranoia gnawed at him as he navigated the bustling streets, his senses attuned to every glance, every whisper. The air smelled faintly of incense, mingling with the metallic tang of advanced technology. Ornate banners bearing her family's crest fluttered in the breeze, a constant reminder of the dynasty that ruled here, and the woman who had walked away from him. His first lead came unexpectedly. While observing a marketplace filled with exotic goods and alien traders, he overheard fragments of conversation between two hooded figures speaking in low tones. One mentioned a name he recognized instantly, hers. Ducking into a nearby alley, he activated the holo projector, pulling up images of classified documents tied to recent political upheavals. When one of the figures turned toward him, curiosity piqued, he seized the opportunity. "I need information," he said quietly, keeping his voice neutral. "About Princess Silri." The figure hesitated, glancing around cautiously before responding. "That name carries risk. Why do you seek it?" "Because she left something behind," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "And I intend to bring it back." After a tense negotiation involving credits and promises of discretion, the figure agreed to guide him to someone who might know more, a scholar exiled from the royal court, living in seclusion on the outskirts of the city. The trek was arduous, winding through ancient ruins overtaken by nature, but eventually they reached a modest dwelling carved into the side of a cliff. Inside, an elderly being sat cross-legged on a woven mat, surrounded by scrolls and hololiths. Their eyes gleamed with intelligence as they regarded him coolly. "So," the scholar began, their voice raspy but commanding, "you are the human who loves our princess." The statement caught him off guard. "How did you?" "Word travels faster than light among those who listen," the scholar interrupted. "Your presence here confirms rumors I dared not believe. What do you wish to know?" He swallowed hard, choosing his words carefully. "Why did she leave? Was it duty? Fear? Coercion?" The scholar studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. "All of those, perhaps, and none. You must understand, human, that Silri has always carried burdens far greater than herself. Her role was never merely to rule, it was to unite. To heal fractures too deep for others to mend. But unity comes at a cost." "What kind of cost?" he asked, dread pooling in his stomach. "A personal one," the scholar replied softly. "She gave up everything she held dear to prevent a war that would have consumed us all. Even love." His knees nearly buckled under the weight of those words. Everything clicked into place, the cryptic messages, the covert summit, the sacrifices hinted at in ancient proverbs. She hadn't abandoned him out of indifference or betrayal. She had made the ultimate choice, placing the needs of countless lives above their own happiness. "But why ask me to forget her?" he whispered, clutching the vial of tea leaves tightly. "Because remembering hurts," the scholar said simply. "And because forgetting allows hope to endure. Without memory, the past cannot haunt us. Without pain, we may dream of futures yet unwritten." Tears blurred his vision as he absorbed the truth. She hadn't wanted him to suffer, not because she stopped caring, but because she cared too much. Love, like sacrifice, was a double-edged sword, cutting both ways. When he finally emerged from the scholar's dwelling, the sun was setting, casting golden light across the landscape. For the first time in months, he felt a measure of peace. Answers weren't always satisfying, nor were they easy to bear. But they offered clarity, a foundation upon which to rebuild. As he gazed at the horizon, he realized something profound. Forgetting her wasn't possible. Not entirely. Nor should it be. She was part of him now, woven into the fabric of his existence just as surely as the stars above. But perhaps forgiveness was. Forgiveness for her choices, for the pain they caused, and for the love that refused to fade even in the face of loss. With renewed purpose, he set course for the stars once more. Whatever awaited him next, whether solace or struggle, he would face it with her memory as his guide. Because in the end, love wasn't about possession or permanence. It was about connection. And connection, no matter how fleeting, endured beyond time itself.